and welcome to a very marketable episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast, because we have with us
Mark.
Oh, his name is Mark. That's true. Marketable. I didn't even think of that. We have with us advertising legend Mark Aronson is back, which is great. We usually have him like once a year, but now we have him at least twice, maybe more, to talk about. I think one of the most interesting things in pop culture is like ads. Ads, especially when we were growing up, like they're a big deal. And Mark,
well, also, I feel like I'm very targetable with ads. Like, show me a good ad and I will buy your product.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's true.
Very easily influenced.
Instagram is my undoing.
So Mark, how you doing?
Oh, great.
Before we get into the deep, we are going to talk about Bud Light today. But before we get to that, I just want to. So yesterday, I'll start off with this story. Yeah. Yesterday, we went to the movies, and Lily wanted popcorn, and I ordered.
I do love movie theater popcorn, I will say, like the traditional. But the last time Becky took me to see Avatar in January, I don't remember it was so
salty.
Bag of salt. I don't know.
Inedibly salty these days.
It was just so bad. So I
can't remember the last time I had good movie theater popcorn.
I didn't want to risk it, so I asked Shai to get me some like store-bought popcorn, but that I could bring illegally into the theater.
I used GoPuff. I don't know if you've used that service, but it seems like they just go to like the equivalent of a dep and they just bring you
and they put it in their bags.
Yeah, they have that. And so I ordered Lily 4 jumbo-sized bags of Boom Chicka Pop popcorn, like party size.
Right.
And then because I saw on the app that this was available, Cinnamon Toast Crunch Cinnadust Glaze popcorn, which I just tasted.
Have your teeth fallen out yet? Did you take a bite? Did they immediately taste like a rose?
Can I just tell you that there's no popcorn in this popcorn?
It's just Manischewitz and cinnamon.
Okay. So 2 questions for our marketing.
Terrible.
So first of all, as Lily and I are arguing over this, I said, Lily, I'm reading the label. It says snackable, poppable, unstoppable. The sweet, crunchy Cinnadust glaze is sure to keep you coming back for more and more.
I think that's false advertising.
It in my face.
I think you could sue for that.
So what goes into creating this?
Who got permission to make this?
And the line, the snackable, poppable, unstoppable. Like, to me, that's very compelling.
It's very stupid. It's terrible.
Snackable, stoppable, unpoppable. What?
Exactly.
There's only. I mean, all right. So, Mark, we'll start us off there before we get into serious stuff.
Can I ask a question? Because I've not
seen the first ingredient. Yes.
I've not seen this popcorn before.
It's terrible.
Is it produced? Like, who is that? I'm trying to think who makes.
First of all, it says product of Canada, so it's legitimate.
Okay, fine.
Is it made?
General Mills. Mills.
Okay, that's helpful.
They make the Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Yes. Okay, so that's the question. My first question was: is this a collaboration between Cinnamon Toast Crunch and a popcorn brand?
No, popcorn would associate with this.
So, it appears so it's a wholly owned product put out by General Mills.
No one else.
So what I would imagine is the impetus for a product like this. And don't quote me on it, but this is my best guess.
You are on the podcast, so no one listening should quote you on this.
Literally, we are quoting.
The next thing I'm going to be in every article, marketing guy, but like they're going to quote me like that poor VP of marketing from Bud Light. You got to be careful what you say on a podcast, I guess. What I would imagine was the impetus for that is what has been going on in the breakfast cereal category for a long time is steady decline.
That is true.
People just aren't buying.
Is it because Shai has slowed down eating cereal?
Yeah, they actually point to that
demise.
The market took a hit when
they point to that in their fourth quarter earnings summary.
Yeah, I've been trying to get it back.
Shai's eating better.
Ever since Josh introduced me to his like quadruple protein milk, the Fairlife milk, I've been eating cereal again because it's basically like I'm working out.
I don't think that's how science works. Okay, so you're saying that cereal has hit a decline.
Well, it's been in decline for years, right? Just because like changing habits, changing
Yeah.
demographics, you know, the whole thing. Millennials killed breakfast cereal. Like they killed everything
millennials,
else.
but I'm a millennial. I buy a lot of breakfast cereal.
We're all on the cusp, or me and you are on the cusp. So we're not really, I don't know if you can, I don't know. The point is that I would just like you all to know it says contained bioengineered food ingredients on here.
Everything's bioengineered.
Everything's bioengineered.
I just think that there's no popcorn in this popcorn.
Okay, fine.
So I do think that
so
this is not going to get me to eat more cereal. I'll tell you that.
Look, despite Becky's attitude on it, cereal has been in decline, partly because it's not good for you. Like it's not nutritious. The calories are empty, you know, all that kind of, especially something like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And then there's this, I'm just looking right now, right. It's basically down. I'm looking like it's down in like the double digits, probably 20%, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and there's an industry reporting company. It's called Mintel, and they do these industry reports on, like, you know, the state of the whole category, or you know, and what's driving it, and all that kind of stuff. And this is years ago, but they basically found they had a survey that almost 40% of millennials found cereal to be too inconvenient because you had to wash a dish afterwards.
Oh my God. But did you not see those ads on Instagram? I was going to get it for Shy, for the little jar that you can drink your cereal out of, so you don't have to put it in a bowl. And you can
but you still have to wash a dish.
Is it like Willy Wonka and you can eat the jar afterwards?
But you still have to wash a dish.
That's a good point. It's more like on the go.
It's more like, I think people are grabbing whatever,
like a bar.
You can throw out the wrapper, or you're getting something from Starbucks on your way, you know, or whatever it is, or your, you know, food cart or whatever. So like, look, I don't have the actual, I don't have the actual research.
Is this a way of saving the brand or advertising the cereal?
Well, I'd say it's actually using the strength of the brand. So like, you don't buy, maybe you do. I don't buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I buy for family size.
Okay.
I love that cereal, but like, it's so gross. So
right. So what I would imagine in this case is it's a very strong brand. It brings to mind that kind of taste, that kind of flavor, that kind of experience. You couldn't imagine starting your day with that, or eating that for breakfast, or feeding that to your kids, but maybe for a snack. Yeah. Or maybe if you sat down, you know, and watched a movie at home, or something like that. So I'd imagine, my best guess is that this is a way that they're branching out of cereal. They know eventually Cinnamon Toast Crunch is just going to, like, you know, decline into oblivion.
So you get the flavor and the negative negative nutritional value, but in something that we consider it like a more acceptable snacking form if it's packaged as a popcorn instead of as like a milk and cereal product. That's a snack. I can have that.
I
it's
remember
a fun
Golden
snack.
Grams did like a bar a while ago. They had like a Golden Grams granola bar, and it was just Golden Grams in like a horizontal shape.
So, right, because basically, like, if you were going to start a new product, or you're going to, how do you put this? Basically, the conventional wisdom at the moment in marketing is what you need for somebody to actually buy your product is a combination of what they call, one, mental availability, and then the other is physical availability, i.e., you have to be able to actually buy it. And so mental availability is, it means something to you. Right, the brand.
Which is exactly what happened to me. Like Cinnamon Toast Crunch has a popcorn, and I can get it while I'm getting this other stuff.
Mental availability.
So this is basically there's a guy named Byron Sharp, and this was, you know, big thinking that started really to be taken up like in the last, I don't know, whatever you call it, 10 years basically. You know, that this is really kind of the key. So I'm assuming, right, if somebody was going to start just a new brand of cinnamon crazy flavored popcorn, or a new brand of snacky popcorn, then you'd have all this work and investment to do to build quote unquote mental availability, basically awareness of the product for people. But what Cinnamon Toast Crunch has is probably excellent mental availability, but people just don't want what that thing actually is. So take advantage of the strength of that brand. And so there was some news maybe last year where basically Kellogg, right, which is a competitor of General Mills, made this announcement basically that they're going to become a food company, not a cereal company. And so I'm assuming, this is in the same vein. And the reason Kellogg decided was because
this is not food.
Well, okay, but you understand, everybody uses food. Everybody with giant factories that make things you eat use food.
Loosely, it's a loose term.
Okay. So speaking of brands in decline, one of the brands that you talked about, I mean, this is years ago that you came on our show and talked about how Bud Light was like looking for its future identity. I remember very clearly, this was probably 2 Super Bowls ago. You talked about the hard seltzer movement, the move away from beer as a product. I really don't drink beer much at all. So this is not a brand I'm super attached to. My biggest attachment to Bud Light is the Bud Bowl from the 80s and early 90s, the animated. I've always been like, let's just bring back the animated bottles. But just for context, of people I've been following, Dylan Mulvaney, an influencer, was used in a Bud Light social media campaign. Dylan Mulvaney also happens to be a trans woman. And I watched the video finally, because it actually took me a while to get to the actual video. I had to go on to Dylan's Instagram to find it, because there's a million articles about it, but no one links to the video.
Right.
It just seemed like an influencer talking about a product to me. It did not, if anything, I was like, oh, this is a pretty funny Bud Light bit. But that was my reaction. Okay, fine, funny Bud Light bit.
But then did you see the bit? There's 2. I don't know what bit we're talking about. People seem to be up in arms about Bud Light sending Dylan the personalized can with her face on it, marking her 1 year as a trans woman.
I saw
that. But then Dylan did some sort of publicity for Bud Light, I believe, before that, where she was like, I'm going to have a Bud Light to watch the game, but like joking about the fact that she doesn't watch sports.
It's the same.
But that's different than the Bud Light video. That's the same video, and at the end she shows her
one video had the same
videos.
Had the same.
I only saw one video.
Okay,
the March Madness video.
Context,
right? March Madness is before.
And the next thing happens that I sort of follow in the story is Kid Rock takes out guns and shoots Bud Light cans, which, like, in this day and age with the issue around guns, the fact that you would even imply violence against other people is, for me, so horrific.
Or against beer. Like, why do we need to get violent?
Right.
Well,
right.
also, but her face is on the can.
Beer, like,
on the cans that he's shooting.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
No,
they only made a few cans
for her.
Becky's
no. What I'm saying is that she shows her face on a can, and then I think Kid Rock's shooting cans to me. Even if her face is not on those cans, there's still a 1-to-1 connection.
There's an implied violence.
There is an implied violence against her there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then media storm, stock prices, like everything kind of goes from there. But I just want to go around and get people's reaction to the initial campaign, like the actual video of her. How do you react to that video back?
None of the other stuff that's going on, just how do I react to that video? I see it as an influencer making a buck and a brand like reaching to do something, like reaching to be relevant.
Right. Like inauthentically.
It's about like very, like she's very cute and sincere in it, of being like, look at me drinking this beer. I don't know what we're celebrating. She's very cute in it. But
she's kind of in on the joke that this is a reach for the beer.
that this is yeah. So she's the endearing part of that video, but I would never watch that and be like, oh, I'm going to try a Bud Light. That seems cute. And again, prefaced with, I'm very influenceable. I love when people market things towards me. Show me a good ad, I'll buy your product. And I didn't feel that way, but I think she's adorable. So.
Well,
I think I had a bunch of different reactions because on one hand, my first thought was, is this a good use of advertising? Because it's hard. We've talked about this before in the Super Bowl ads. I like things to feel authentic. And if I don't believe that so-and-so is drinking the thing or eating the thing, when Mila Kunis, right, had the Cheetos ad,
Cheetos,
a Cheeto for her life. I'm like,
you want to know what's real? Me pouring Cheetos into my mouth like it's a drink, which I did earlier.
Show me the celebrity that's actually going to enjoy the Cheeto. So there's immediately I'm thinking, that I don't love when it's inauthentic, but at the same time I was like, good for Bud Light.
I agree with that. I agree with good for Bud Light.
At the same time I was like, I don't drink much beer, and if I did, I maybe wouldn't pick a Bud Light because I even have access to it where I live. But if anybody was going to be like, oh, Bud Light is not a good beer, I might just stand up and be like, hey, they're inclusive. They're an inclusive brand. Don't you talk bad about Bud Light. I might defend the brand, even though it's not about the drink. And that I think made me, look at the brand differently for the first time.
All right, Mark, our expert, break it down.
I only care what Mark has to say.
I want to take it in sections. I want to take it let's just start with the ad.
Was the ad good?
As an ad and the decision to do it and where Bud Light is as a company up until the moment that ad causes a storm.
Well, right. And so I think, this is going to be a bit inside baseball or whatever. Right.
That's what we got you here.
Technically, that's not an ad. Technically it is an ad, but right. So this, in my mind, that's a bog standard influencer.
Yeah.
Paid to, right? And
it's a partnership, they called it, right? She's partnering.
Yeah, that means they're paying her to post it on her socials.
Right.
Right. And right. She has a following in excess of 10 million people.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually difficult to buy a TV program with an audience of 10 million people, truthfully.
Right.
And if you're buying digital ads, they're going to tell you 4,000 million zillion bazillion people.
It's
this, and so there's a piece of it, and look do they have credibility? Do they have authenticity in terms of the community? They do support LGBTQ organizations and events. Right. I think it's a question. I think everybody has their own perception of Bud Light in mind. But for me, what's interesting is in terms of authenticity or putting your money where your mouth is, okay, we made a can with your face on it. That's right. It's not, that takes some doing back at the, can factory or whatever.
And you're literally, you know what I mean? Attaching a face to the brand.
Right. So, so there's something there where it,
celebrate a moment in this person's life too.
Right. And I think, look, is it an audience grab? Probably. How authentic is it? But I think the biggest thing for me is how wildly overblown everything has become, and so quickly. I mean, right? Because the reason I was sort of saying it's quote unquote not an ad, it is technically an ad by legal standards, and that's why she has to identify as such, et cetera, right? But think about what they did a month before, right? Where they spent $10 million, $15 million on a Super Bowl ad with Miles and Miles Teller and.
See, did we have a whole debate over that? Because I loved that one.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, but the first point I want to just make about it is this whole thing, right? So you have two videos. They paid her for sure, but they probably paid I don't know, $100,000 maybe for all this stuff, right? And one of them was supporting a contest with a $15,000 prize.
Mm-hmm.
You guys could fucking run a contest with a $15,000 prize. Do you know what I mean? This is not, priority number one for Anheuser-Busch, a $15,000, So I think it's helpful to draw this distinction, which is Bud Light did make a massive investment in advertising that is much more inclusive than things that we've seen previously in terms of, there's this ad with Miles Teller and I can't remember how to pronounce his wife's name. Kelly. And so, right, two, like a man and a woman, and they're both the hero of the ad, and right. Perhaps like she is, because the action starts with the, but and there's been others in this campaign, right, where there was a woman, like literally that's kind of the first time a woman has been the quote unquote hero of a beer ad, where she's walking with the,
really
these beers. And so
that's amazing. I did not know that.
Right. And when they're talking about, the positioning of the brand and what they want people to know, right, there's that line, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. That's the thing they're investing in. Right. And so all of these things on all of these articles and all these saying like, oh, they've pivoted and they're leaving their audience behind and now they're trends. That's not that, right. They're spending millions, hundreds of millions, like on this easy to drink, easy to enjoy. And you can tell they're getting more widely inclusive. And I have to imagine. So
this is something they've been signaling and doing for a while. So the idea that this is a break from the trajectory of this brand is kind of a myth. It's kind of people being hysterical.
Yeah, that's a great segue. People being, yes. And so, and what's been interesting, I think, is, so you have first the reaction, which is, you can say shooting the guns and whatever is hysterical, but then everything else, what is that guy's name? Ben Shapiro, like all these,
who has like 5 million.
It's all hysterical. do you know what I mean? Like, and then frankly, the reporting on it is hysterical, right? No fact checking, no nothing. And right, they're pulling this old quote from the VP of marketing that she did on a podcast about like decorating your house, right? It's like an hour into this podcast, right? Totally out of context. They're talking about sales results, totally out of context.
And she says, this is, no longer the beer of like frat boys or whatever.
Well, look, what she said, I listened to it. And so everyone's pulling that quote.
Yeah, but Mark listened to the whole thing.
Right. So
listen to the entire decorating ad.
Yeah, if you want to say the quote, or I'll say the quote.
No, go for it. You got it.
Right. So she said, right, this is the thing that's in every story, the New York Post, Fox Business, everybody's all over this, and they name her and they say that she went to Harvard, and right, and all this, all the implications of how, of course, she's not in touch with the people, the whole thing. And so she says, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. And if we do not attract young drinkers to come and drink this brand, there will be no future for Bud Light. Right. And then she talks about how what was working for them previously is no longer working. We had this hangover, this quote, we had this hangover. I mean, Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important that we had another approach. And so everybody is taking this and construing it as like, this woman came in and decided like, I'm going to change Bud Light. Here's what, but these are facts. This is true. This is the challenge that she was handed
by the corporation.
By the corporation. Right. A person doesn't, a 39-year-old person doesn't walk in to a $200 billion corporation and say like, I got some new ideas for Bud Light. I got this. And so, right.
What do you think of, on that note, just quickly, what do you think of then the executives claiming that they had no idea?
That's probably true.
Okay.
Because when you think about the money spent on Dylan Mulvaney social influence,
it's a drop in their bucket.
If you are the CEO of Bud Light, even the US CEO of Bud Light, and your media budget is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, do you think if a vice president of marketing was like, hey, you think I could bring 2 Instagram posts from an influencer for you to check out? Of course he had no idea. Of course he had no idea. Did he know the details about the Super Bowl ad? Yes.
But should he have backed his team or been like, oh, sorry, didn't know? Should the answer have been like, I stand by my marketing team's
I think
integrity?
It's the response, because people are up in arms that it wasn't a real apology, but he's not apologizing. He's just
he's not doing anything.
Right. It's just new. He's not doing anything. Right. He does.
And is that okay?
Response. What do you think of that?
Look, in my mind, you can answer this two ways, right? One is from your own personal point of view about who you're supporting or not supporting. And so if you're a supporter of LGBTQ organizations and the rights of people who identify as such, then that's pretty feckless sort of right. That
Your
really
company supposedly stands by that.
Right. So. And you want to sponsor Pride and you want to, in different, and so, but I think the other thing is it was so tepid. He basically said, oh, well, we certainly didn't mean to cause any division. It was so tepid. It doesn't work for anybody. It basically, nobody feels like that's like, okay. And frankly, I think it was a little bit even maybe worse than doing nothing because it just prolonged the conversation. And now everybody's jumping on this.
Right.
And I think truthfully, I don't know if you're the CEO, I understand the uproar, but I think there's an opportunity to correct this with facts, which is, we did a promotion with this influencer. This person identifies as trans. What's wrong with that? Mm-hmm. We're not telling people don't drink Bud Light unless you're trans, or unless you want your kids to be trans.
Howard Stern's response of like, I would love to talk to Ben Shapiro and just be like, why do you care if Dylan Mulvaney drinks a Bud Light? You don't own Bud Light. A lot of people can drink Bud Light.
That's it.
Seriously, is this like at the point that we're at? I'm curious Look, I've never, and I loved that Miles Teller ad, but we have all never talked about Bud Light this much. Isn't it doing exactly what it's also supposed to do, or no? Like,
it's certainly on the radar of people that don't typically drink it.
Or like companies take a big hit at first after doing something bold and dangerous. That happens all the time. And then they bounce back, right? Like, what do you think? Like $5 billion makes me a little bit anxious to hear that they lost, but it's just a market value. It's not
that's right. And it's $5 billion. Like, but
as a
percentage, it's right. It's when it's $5 billion on whatever that is, like 198 billion.
Right.
It's like, okay, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a big drop. But if you look at already, it started to sort of inch its way back up.
Right.
And I think even broadly speaking, the stock is at a higher price than it was in February. Not because of this, but there's something happening. And look, people are pointing to the Anheuser-Busch stock price, right? And Bud Light is a big feature of Anheuser-Busch and the Anheuser-Busch portfolio because it's the best-selling beer in the United States. But Anheuser-Busch, which is like AB InBev, is a massive global beer company, right? They merged with Interbrand, they moved, right? And so Interbrew, excuse me. And so there is Interbrew merged with Ambev, AB, so there was all these mergers.
I should put some context is that you have very specific experience. I should have said this up top, handling beer in the marketing industry. You're not just rattling this. You're not reading off a Wikipedia page here. You have very detailed knowledge of this.
I'm trying to shake it out of my memory. No, but I think yes. So this is a big brand. This is the biggest beer brand in the United States. But then Mexico's got a giant market for beer, right? Like there's there's Europe, there's and so everybody's saying if you're looking at the AB stock price, this definitely had an effect on it because of how concentrated and intense the media storm was about it. But it remains. By most of the ratings agencies, it remains a buy. By most of or a long choice. And I think so. Yeah. What I immediately went to was Nike. I was like, okay, this is exactly what happened.
Right.
Exactly what happened with Kaepernick. It's exactly what happened with Kaepernick. And then by the end, they were up $6 billion or whatever it was. And I don't know that that's going to happen in quite the same way because Nike is sort of a singular brand, right? And there's Nike Air, there's Air Jordan, right? But Nike is kind of a singular brand, whereas Bud Light is in a portfolio, a massive portfolio, right? There's Bud Light, there's Bud Heavy or original Bud, right? There's Michelob Ultra, which is also one of the most popular beers in the United States. Like it's just a massive.
Wait, and it's owned by the same company, correct?
That's right. AB InBev. I mean, it's literally
people being like, next time, instead of Bud Light, I'll just have a Michelob.
Right. And half the time they're buying another Anheuser-Busch brand.
Right. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's the same company, you dum-dum. Like what?
That's 100%.
And can I ask you a question? If you are going to refresh your brand and broaden your brand and have someone like Dylan be a spokesperson, a partner, whatever it is, are you pushing out your original clients? Like, why do people feel so offended that like the everyday working man is now no longer allowed to drink the beer?
But it's a great question. Yes, it's a great question. And I'll answer it in two parts.
I mean, what are you supposed to?
I'll answer it in two parts. And because one, it has a broader implication, I think, which is something that I've been thinking a lot about since, we talked about doing this podcast, is one of it is, right? The regular working man is not allowed to drink this anymore. Do you know what I mean? They're not excluding anybody from it. And what this is like the product of an outrage machine that manufactures outrage because truthfully, that's the only way in this day and age to get people's attention and keep it anymore. If you look at everything on social media, if you look at how things work on Facebook, if you look at the way YouTube's algorithm works, everything is because people know that outrage is the most effective thing. It's the thing that's going to get you to engage, and it's going to keep you engaged. And so, right, this isn't just, oh, these guys are so mad, Kid Rock is so mad. That's, yeah, sure. But there are twin parts of this, which is like outrage machine. This is the way, right? Brands in the past used to be worried that, okay, I'm going to sponsor Pride, but the backlash is going to be from people who identify as LGBTQ because I was not authentic or because I'm just buying their support.
My original comment, was like, yeah, we're all now looking at the authenticity. We used to.
Right. So now, like if you just zoom out and think about this.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Now what's happened is 2 social media posts that maybe cost $100,000 or $150,000 or whatever it is. I don't know what the number is, but it's a right in the context of AB InBev's giant marketing budget, right? 2 social media posts have turned into a firestorm, right? And that is Kid Rock is doing that because it's expeditious for Kid Rock. The guy's irrelevant. and like, do you know what I mean? So this is a great way so the outrage machine kicks up around this, and that I think
drives clicks and viewers and in the right, because then suddenly people are following this story and someone else is selling ad time on that story.
Right. And so look, if they're guilty of anything, if the marketing team is guilty of anything, it's failing to anticipate how crazy this was going to become. And I think they ought to be cut some slack on that because like, this is wildly crazy. Or in my mind anyway, like it's when you look at what it actually was, it's a little bit shocking that it turned into, this kind of thing. Like if you look at the Nike stuff with Kaepernick, they made him the face of a massive refresh campaign of Just Do It, right? For the first time in 30 years, they put something in front of Just Do It, right? Dream Crazy, right? And he was in every country, in every major city. He was on billboards. He was on there's a massive TV buy. It was a huge investment. This is like literally 2 Instagram posts and a $15,000 contest.
Did Nike stand by? I don't remember. Nike. Yes, they stood by Kaepernick.
They did, and they had that conversation with their ad agency, which is called Wieden and Kennedy. Dan Wieden and Phil Knight sat down, and they basically said, we're going to do this. Right, it's because it's the right thing to do.
They went in eyes wide open and they owned their decision. They took responsibility.
Of course they did. And to Lily's question about are you shutting out some of your audience, or are you right? You could make the case that was very calculated on their part. I think it was Scott Galloway called it arbitrage, basically, of their audience, right? So you have, sure, there are people that buy Nike all over the country. And if somebody in Missouri is going to take his Nikes and light them on fire in the barbecue, there's an important trade-off that they were anticipating. We're going to lose those people that get their Nikes from Foot Locker or DSW or whatever, and let them fucking light them on fire or feed them to their whatever or cement or whatever they're going to do, right? But
the trade-off was huge.
The trade-off is we have this young audience coming up that live in big cities that care about streetwear and care about sneakers, and care about sports, right? And that's right, which is a feature of their mindset in terms of right. It's being mislabeled or unkindly labeled as woke, right? But they are aware. They want equality for people. They're not fussed about gender. They are pro LGBTQ rights, like all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so you could make the case that they made a calculated decision. This group of barbecuing their shoe guys is worth however much it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But what needs to be done, something needs to happen now. Right. A voice needs to be.
I see what you're saying, though, how this situation is just not proportionate that way.
Well, not only is it not proportionate. Yeah. Go ahead, Becky. Sorry.
I say it feels like Bud is just putting like a toe in the water with these social media posts to be like,
well, they've done other things. What I find really
like, what will happen if it's like a toe in the water?
Well, this massive company is one of the largest Republican, they're a huge, not largest, but they are a huge Republican Party donor, right, to politicians. Yeah. And then on the other hand, they do support and try and, be like on the side of these more, let's say, left causes. And it's interesting how Donald Trump Jr. and Joe Rogan and a bunch of other people have came out right away in defense, being like, no, Anheuser, just don't not drink Bud Light, and everybody had to be. I just think the outrage wasn't so smart, and the people who were relying on Anheuser-Busch's money had to reel it in.
You know what? The truth is, honestly, Anheuser-Busch is still going to give them their money.
Right.
Hey, there's all these other brands. There's all these. Right. That money is not so people buy Budweiser or Michelob or whatever. That money is for regulations and legal drinking ages, and,
the lobby,
and being able to tax-free have distributors do whatever. And so I mean, I think again, it's right. This is Bud Light, which is one brand in a house of just dozens and dozens of huge brands that are all under this kind of banner. And so I think, the other thing is it's, I almost said they don't have a choice. Bud Light, right? This brand is in decline. And what happens is it declines. If you look at what giant companies do, or giant marketers or packaged goods companies, you have giant brands and they decline, and then they continue supporting them. They try different things. And then eventually they just stop supporting them. And then whatever the volume they get from it. And so that's what's happening here. This Bud Light is like half the size that it was 10 years ago. And the beer category for the first time has been overtaken by spirits in terms of people shopping the category, which is wild. Almost unheard of in terms of sales. So if you take that whole alcoholic beverage category, for the first time, spirits represents a larger percentage of sales than beer, right? So spirits is at whatever it is, 42%, beer is at 41%, right? But in 2000, beer was 60%.
Wow.
So if you think about that. And so
I'm not a beer guy. So I feel like people are seeing light. So now let's get to what I would say is not the last chapter, most recent chapter in the story is, and you flagged this for us, Mark. Bud Light puts out an ad of a horse riding across the Brooklyn Bridge with an American flag and soldiers,
very large horse,
putting up the flag. Well, it's the Clydesdale, right?
The Clydesdale,
which is more of a Budweiser thing, but it's like, and tells the story of like the company and like has it like walking through St. Louis and all.
I love the part of I love so much the part where it's like, in the part of America where a handshake is a contract or whatever.
So
I thought this ad
between two men.
I thought this ad was a cartoon ad from The Simpsons.
I mean, it is every trope you could imagine. And what I don't know,
which is shocking.
One more time.
There's one woman in the ad for a split second.
Right. Okay. So one minor point of clarification or whatever is this is actually Budweiser.
That's why there is the Clydesdale. That does make
right.
sense.
Not Bud Light.
Right.
So, but this is the Budweiser brand that put this out kind of right away.
Sorry, just quickly. Yes. Those are two different beers, like two entirely different beers. There's a Budweiser and Bud Light, and they're like, no, I mean, but
so you only see the Clydesdales
like
when
they have
it's
two different
Budweiser.
They have two totally different marketing campaigns and strategies.
Yes,
they're not.
So
it's wild.
So,
I'm kind of with Becky though.
It's like Labatt.
Here's a good way of looking at it. Okay, so Budweiser used to be the best-selling beer in the country, and it's been in massive decline over the last 20 years, right? Partly because of carbs, calories, kind of all that kind of stuff, and right, it was entrenched, right? The king of beers, and it's got this like unshakable, like, this Bud's for you.
This Bud's
kind
for
of
you.
Right, kind of thing, which is, cool. And so, and Bud Light overtook Bud like a long time ago and is now much bigger. It's probably twice the size of Bud now. So there's a couple of things potentially, I don't know what's happening, obviously inside the company. There's a couple of things potentially happening. One is the marketing team of Bud, which is different than the marketing team of Bud Light, which is different than the marketing team of Michelob Ultra, which is different than the marketing team of Stella, which is different than the market, right? So this is a huge organization. So probably the marketing team of Bud are shitting themselves. They're basically like, those fucking guys at Bud Light, right? Because what is happening is people are taking it out on anything with the name Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
Bomb threats at the breweries.
Unbelievable.
In Missouri, the distributors are canceling all the Clydesdale events because they're worried for the safety of their employees, right? And the Clydesdales are iconically associated with Budweiser.
Right.
So one option, one potentially thing is the Budweiser marketing team are like this is the last thing we need right now. We have to do something to show like we're not part of that. And just like and like reestablish, right, that we're for our core audience or whatever. So it could be they're like either they've had this in the can for some kind of a situation.
Oh, no, they definitely like washed down that Clydesdale yesterday, and they're
no. I mean, they have all that footage is
stock footage
they've got. They didn't go out and shoot it, like all that kind of stuff.
They just have B-reel of
an intern made it on Premiere.
Yeah, and look, if you go back and look at other ads, like there was an ad that had the Clydesdale on the Brooklyn Bridge, like so So that's one option. Is that team was like, God, if we don't do something, we are just going to wear this and we're screwed.
Right.
That's one. Another option is it came right from the top, which is like, somebody do something, somebody show American. Everybody we're like Team America, or
it can't be Bud Light. So is it possible that this is so elaborate that this is like a kayfabe, like in wrestling, like where Bud Light, like where Budweiser as an organization is like, we're going to create two teams. They're going to literally embody the culture war of America.
Right. The woke team?
No. Well, no.
We're going to do Bud Bowl on a massive societal scale.
In a way that may be a little bit what's happening, but that's not with the intention of pitting people against each other, but that's the point of a portfolio strategy, which is I'm the parent company and I have this many dozens of brands, right? And so I'm going to pull all of these levers as best I can to maximize the number of people that are going to engage with these brands and buy our stuff, right? So Budweiser, classic Budweiser, has a specific audience that they think is going to be the people that turn out and drink that. And that audience is shrinking. Bud Light has a different group of people that they think is going to be the audience. Younger, more sociable, right? I'm sure they have reams of research. They have market research. Like at a company like this, market research is like black ops. Deploy it anytime. They have researched, and nobody makes any moves without, right? They research to death. Can we have an ad with a female hero in it? Right. By hero, I mean like protagonist, right? Or they research that to death. I guarantee it. Right. So they're comfortable with all that stuff. And so, yeah, basically what happens is, no, they don't set the teams against each other in a fight to the death kind of way, but they do allow them independence, and they plan for them to take on different audiences.
Right. And it's in their best interest that they compete a little bit with each other because
they have different identities. Because, for example, I didn't know the difference between any of these, but now I'm starting to learn.
That's why you're not the target audience of either of those things.
No.
Right?
Sorry, Becky.
Becky's husband is in a craft homebrew mead club.
I would just say, how much of the market does mead have? Does it say? How many points does mead have?
Mead is like a dessert wine.
That's not even charts.
Meads are sent to him. They each have like an individually hand-painted bottle. I taste them with him.
They taste like medicine. They taste like they need a prescription. They're terrible.
Be kind.
And so I think, right, there's a couple of clues.
Definitely not listening.
There's a couple of clues in terms of like, there's always clues in the earnings reports in terms of what these companies are actually trying to do. And so like, there's a couple of clues in the most recent, which is like for the end of Q4 right, of 2022, but that just dropped in March when they were announcing earnings. Right. And so there's a couple of things where you can really see kind of what's going on. And so the first is one of the big things is right in these earnings reports, they talk about the earnings, and then they say, here's all our priorities and how we're delivering on all these priorities and everything's going amazing and all that kind of stuff to show, right, that this is really well thought through and they're making tons of progress and everybody should, be happy and buy the stock. And so, one of the things in terms of the way that they talk about their strategic priorities, like the first big one is leading and growing the category, right? They're the biggest player in beer, so they should lead and grow the category. And one of the key pillars for them of leading and growing the category is something that they call making it an inclusive category, right? And so what they said about that is, right, in fiscal year 2022, they're very happy to report that the percentage of consumers purchasing our portfolio of brands increase across more than 70% of the markets, right, that they're in. That's all the countries, it's et cetera, et cetera. And the increase in participation was led by female consumers, driven by the expansion of brands and packs in our premium and beyond beer portfolio. So premium, you're going to love this. Premium are the brands that the big mainstream brands like Bud Light, Budweiser, et cetera. And then beyond beer are things like hard seltzer, et cetera, right? So like, if you are the vice president of marketing of Bud Light and you're reading that in the quarterly results reporting, you're you're patting yourself on the back and counting your bonus, right? It's massive, right? And then deeper in, when they talk about the United States specifically, right? They talk about accelerating investment to rebalance the whole portfolio towards growing segments, right? So Bud Light is not in a growing segment. The growing segments are stuff like Michelob Ultra, right, in that low carb, more health conscious kind of stuff, or in things that they call, right, beyond beer, right? So those are stuff like Neutral, that's this new vodka seltzer, or Cutwater is a
we're getting such great recommendations of
alcohol
of alcohols here. Thanks.
Cutwater.
I realize how little I drink.
Water.
So Mark.
Yes.
So Mark, have you seen the TV show American Auto on NBC or Peacock?
Unfortunately, no.
I highly recommend it because American Auto takes place in and I recommend this to everyone. My kids have been watching with my kids too. It's a Parks and Rec, superstore style type workplace thing. And it takes place in a fictitious
reality show.
No. It takes place that's American Choppers.
That's it.
It takes place in a fictitious big three auto company in Michigan.
Okay.
And a new CEO comes in, and each episode is essentially a different type of crisis. There is actually a great episode on them virtue signaling around LGBTQ rights and then causing like a huge
it's a great episode.
They do it inauthentically, then they try to correct and they overcorrect and they make everything worse and they hire and then it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Anyways, I highly recommend that show because I think that show fits a lot of the stuff that you're talking here. So I think you'd really enjoy it. I'd love for you to watch it and come back and reference it.
I'm into it.
All right. So if you were telling Bud Light, if you were giving your recommendation to Bud Light before we ask you some movies and TV questions, if you're really giving Bud Light your recommendation on next move, what would be your next move?
Sorry, Shai, you're going to ask him to just give out free advice. To be clear, this advice normally costs.
This costs a lot of money. That's
a lot of money. You need to know Mark to have like a connection to even get in, to even have a chance to get that advice. But no, Mark, just please.
I'll ask Mark this.
Just give out free advice.
Do you think that they will actually reach an audience that hasn't been drinking their beer before? Will this ad work?
It's not an ad.
Or whatever. Will this advertising strategy work?
I think the best way of answering that,
pick up a Bud Light now,
is look at it in a bigger context. The truth is, Bud Light is so ubiquitous. Everybody's had a Bud Light. I know not everybody, not Becky, because she doesn't even know the difference between Bud and Bud Light.
Maybe I thought I was drinking a Stella, but really I was having a Bud Light, and I just don't know the difference.
But look, everybody's had a Bud Light. If you've been to a Major League Baseball stadium, had a beer, you've had a Bud Light.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And so I think, right, are they going to be successful in reaching an entirely new audience that has never had Bud Light before, and it's going to double no. Right? But they know they're not going to do that. What they do know is that they need a different audience, right? Look, for all these people who are complaining so much, okay, if you want Bud Light to market to you, then start fucking drinking it. Kid Rock, if you bought enough Bud Light, then they would make ads about you.
They're saying boycott, but they should actually support the brand.
People are treating it as though they're looking a gift horse in the mouth, oh yeah, you're taking this beer away from me. You don't buy enough of it that they just dollars and cents. You don't buy enough of it.
That's a great point.
And so what are they going to do? Keep pandering to you and let it decline? That's an option, but right, this person has a mandate to get the brand either leveled out or back to growth. And look, the unspoken thing in the beer category is they need the youngest drinkers they can get. Right? Because
no.
Look, no. I'm not saying they do anything nefarious
but you want long-standing clients.
It's not like Bold de Nuit in Montreal where they have
right. No, I'm not saying so
Bold de Nuit
underhanded.
Is not open anymore.
No, they're not.
Okay.
But look, there's a common abbreviation in spirits and alcohol and beer marketing, which is LDA, right? Which stands for legal drinking age. So when they're starting to define their target audience, it's we need people LDA to 25 or whatever, or whatever it is. So, right. And they need younger people, especially a giant ubiquitous brand like Bud Light. They need younger people because A, they drink the most beer and B, there used to be, the thinking is changing on that, but there used to be a thing about, once you start drinking beers, you build loyalties or you build tastes for certain things. And then if you drink it earlier, then you'll keep drinking it. That's less true now. So when you look at, so now we're talking, kids who are 21, right? And they know probably even less than 21, but they would never say that. And they would never explicitly target people that are less than 21. Right. So for all of us, those are people who are born right in the year 2002.
That's nuts. Don't say that on this
which
podcast.
Is wild.
After 9/11.
That's incorrect. That is incorrect and very
right. So just an aside on that, I got carded in a Trader Joe's the other day because I was wearing a hat. So
Good
you know,
for
my
you.
and for the benefit.
Well, I mean, when you're not wearing a hat, aren't they concerned that a baby is trying to buy that?
Yes, a giant baby is for the benefit of your listeners. I'm a bald man, and so right.
With a
so
very young.
Funny is like,
yeah, you're very youthful. You have not aged. I just watched my wedding video. You look exactly the same.
Oh, you know, keeps all this marketing just keeps me young. So I pull out the driver's license, and within like a flash, she says, "Okay, yeah, cool." And I was like, "Really? You that fast?" She's like, "I saw it started with a 1." The year. And I was like, "That's wild. That is wild." Anyway,
we owe.
I said, "Can you believe it? I was born in the 70s." And she was like, "You have great skin."
You do.
Thank you. So look, they need the youngest people they can get, basically, right? I'm not alleging any, you know, but right. But that's the core to turning Bud Light around. So what are they looking at? A group of people. If you look at that generation, they're more tolerant, they're more inclusive, they're more gender fluid. They hang out. This is
a good thing about this younger generation. A lot of good things.
I don't like to wash a dish, but
but look, when we used to go out, you would go out with dudes, or you would go out with girls, and then the dudes would pursue right, and you would go and you would have wingman and all this bullshit. They don't go out like that anymore. That's not how they hang out. That's not how they hang out together, right? And they party, and so so now if you look at all the choices holistically, an ad where you have two main characters that are man and a woman, like they're making all of these. Some of them are ham-fisted, but they're making all of these choices to be more inclusive, to appeal to this younger audience. And this is like one social media post. This is like one choice out of 100 choices.
Is this a case for how capitalism is going to make the world better?
Potentially.
They still donate to the Republican Party.
Well, look, I mean,
sort of like
don't make the world better
until
at the moment. A lot of these things are making the world, quote unquote, better because the dollars are there, because more people are interested in being inclusive and going out in in an inclusive way and being tolerant or supportive of group more. If you look at the country, if you look at whoever, that's why like all this outrage is coming from a minority.
Right.
The way capitalism, right? The way all these brands work is the majority, like the more money they could get, right? If it was somehow, right, there was a time where only dudes were buying beer like this. And that's why when I started in advertising, I would go to casting sessions and we would look at women in bikinis, and that was part of our job because the ads were so fucking sexist, right? That because that's where the money was all with these dudes. And so
how far they come.
They're making the world better, but that's because
that's where the money is.
There's more money in doing that at the moment.
Thank goodness. I hope it stays that way. All right.
And look, I'll say one other thing, right, which is just shocking, is the reporting on this stuff, right? The reporting is this breathless, the stock price, which is true. And then they're talking about sales declines, these crazy sales declines. And you're reading stuff which is just, if you read it like a little bit deeper, it's wild. It's like stuff like, the New York Post or whatever are talking about, these massive sales declines and all this stuff. And it's just bananas. Like, so, the headline is like, sales have dropped 30% over the past week. And then you read down into the article and it's like, there's a guy who owns one bar in Missouri. and in Barnhart, Missouri, he told Fox Business.
He told
Fox Business, in Bud Light's effort to be inclusive, they excluded almost everybody else, including their traditional audience who has been abandoning the brand for 10 years to the point that it's going to be not supported anymore, right? And then deeper it says,
this is hardcore reporting.
Did people fail? Or did people bail on Bud Light? This same guy, it says that in his bar, right, sales of Anheuser-Busch bottled products dropped 30% over the past week, right? And it wasn't just Case and Bucks, that was the bar that saw sales plummet. Brew House, another bar over there, told Fox that 80% of people ordered something else.
These are real statistics.
80%.
Right. And then they say this analyst talks about a scenario in Texas.
So there's no fact check in these articles. It's literally just.
They're just taking this stuff.
It's also just anecdotal information. It's just like none of it's real stats. It's just anecdotal.
Well, and that's also true because the actual numbers aren't even available yet, right? Because distributors only.
Well, that was actually one of my questions. I think in one of the news clips I was watching, it was this guy was talking about how it's affecting small town distributors, and this choice that Bud Light made, they weren't thinking about how it affected all of these distributors who are now losing money. And I'm like, really?
Okay,
that seems like really. I was like, that doesn't seem true? Can you?
First of all, distributors have one of the best business models and deals. They make money hand over fist. Secondly, they distribute all kinds of stuff. There's not people who only distribute Bud Light. So if they're not selling Bud Light, if they're not right, the distributor basically gets product from these producers to the bars or to the stores. So if it's not Bud Light, it's going to be another thing. Some of them distribute also soft drinks and soda and whatever. Some of them distribute also,
it's pretty insane.
I don't think anybody can see the effect. Basically, distributors report either weekly or monthly. So you don't have the full picture of that yet.
We have to check back in a month.
There's point of sale data that's available from bars
by calling local bars and asking.
But that gets aggregated by research last week. Right. So, but here, let me just tell you this one. Right. So you have somebody citing a scenario in Texas where Bud Light has long been a sponsor of a weekly dart league that draws more than 100 players every Thursday.
Oh, wow.
The bar usually blows through 3 kegs of Bud Light at the event. And this week, they sold only 4 bottles of Bud Light. And so, look, I just want to put that into context, basically. Broadly speaking, beer sales are measured, so you can measure them in dollars or you measure them in volume. And volume of beer sales in the United States is measured in barrels, right? So they'll say, this company did, this many hundred, whatever, million barrels, whatever. And so a barrel, sorry, I'll start this way. A keg is 15.5 gallons of beer, which makes it the equivalent of 1.3 barrels, right? So these 3 kegs, right? These 3 kegs in Texas have cost Anheuser-Busch 3.9 barrels of beer.
Is it like a 0.00000%?
Yeah. From a couple years ago, Bud Light, their total output of barrels was 25 million barrels. So right. it's like I just got it.
It's not like a stadium canceled their order. Like a
even
bar in
so,
Texas, it's just,
okay, right. So you're going to lose 2,000 barrels,
right?
Which is when you put it up against 25 million barrels. It's anyway. So look,
they've blown it out of proportion, is what you're saying.
It could very well be that in some places people are never going to drink Bud Light ever again. That's totally possible. It could very well be that all the numbers will come in and they'll see it was a giant mistake and nobody's ever going to order a Bud Light ever again, or people are just not ordering it. That's possible, and that'll come out. But that's not available right now. And this breathless reporting of like 30% decline, 80% decline in headlines, like is just, that's this outright. That's the,
I feel like this is one of the most educational episodes we've had in a long time. Now, Mark,
this is amazing.
Thank you. Switching subjects to movies, have you seen any trailers or ads for anything TV related that like you really liked lately?
Have I seen a trailer?
I'm not going to say like, have you watched? I mean, if you have a show you want to recommend, great.
Like an advertisement,
or is it like a movie coming out? Like, oh, I saw the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer. I really like that song.
I can't think of a trailer per se, and I feel like I'm like the worst person for this part of the podcast because I feel like I'm going to say things and you're like, oh, that's shit everybody watches. So like,
that's fine. People want to know what marketing geniuses watch.
Right. I found on Apple TV that show Shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, great show.
It's just excellent.
I haven't seen it yet. So I haven't seen it yet. Thank you for the recommendation, Mark.
It's really good. I was listening to an interview with Brett Goldstein, who's one of the writers, and he talks about he had to talk to Harrison Ford about the scripts, and he was like so nervous, and like Harrison Ford was basically like, and he's like best writing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I was like, okay.
I mean, I will say with a lot of Harrison Ford's things that he has done, this is by far the best writing I've seen him act in a long time.
And it's so good for him too. It's that character is excellent.
It's great, but he doesn't like K118 or whatever, the Widowmaker or whatever, K19, the Widowmaker was not written this well. And he's Harrison Ford. He can do whatever he wants.
Fair.
It's nice to see him act something so well written and remind you what a good
actor he is.
Yeah, what a good actor he is.
I think that's really fair. This is going to...
That's acting since Regarding Henry.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
This is going to be very weird, but maybe you'll find the appeal in it. There's on Netflix, there's this show called 19-2. Which is it's a French Canadian show set in Montreal.
We love Canadian and French Canadian things.
It's about the 19th precinct in Montreal, which is like I think downtown, like maybe sort of close to the old port.
This is amazing.
We need to watch this.
It's a police procedural show. It gets really friggin' dramatic. I watched it like in the original audio, like with subtitles, and that joie was just like washing over me.
It's very French Canadian.
It's like in French. It's like in French.
It's in French. It's in French, and it's like, and I was just loving that, like all those things where they're like, "Bon weekend," where they mix like French.
I love that.
Like the joie
was. Are they drinking Molson in the show?
And then I didn't realize this, but apparently it was remade in English. For something in Canada called Acorn TV. I can't find it anywhere.
Oh, my dad loves Acorn.
You're right. There's a 2014 version of the show.
Yes.
With Adrian Holmes, Jared
Kiso.
With Kiso.
With
Shorzy.
Yeah.
Shorzy's in it.
And Letterkenny. Right. So I can't find that English version.
38 episodes of this show. I will find it for us.
I blew through the French version.
Was finding this show.
And what I would say is what's great, in many ways it's like melodramatic and over the top and all that kind of stuff, but it's nice because it's really an ongoing story. It's not like every episode is like Law and Order and there's just a story that resolves itself like in one episode. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the action, a lot of the stuff is like about really mundane police things because it's just sort of a vehicle for their conversation to carry the action through. So not everything is like a crazy police chase or some of it is like, they stop.
They're just eating at La Belle Provence.
I'm sure there is.
They're just like having a poutine.
Yeah.
I was watching.
They basically stop at Tim Hortons every day, like who are I'm sure have product placement and whatever. So anyway, that was a little.
And have you seen both versions, the French and the English?
I can't get my hands on.
I'm gonna find you. You're gonna get a thank you gift for being on this show and giving us all this free, like, valuable insight.
Huh.
It says torn by life, bound by the streets.
Yeah, it's melodramatic. It's kind of over the top. I think part of it was just listening to them talk. Kind of gave me just a little nostalgia and that kind of thing. But I went through it quite quickly.
Well,
this is amazing.
You really, really buried the lead there. Well, Cinnamon Toast Crunch Popcorn to Bud Light to 19-2. We've had a great episode here with Mark Aronson, Advertising Titan. Do you want anybody to follow you? Where should they follow you?
On Twitter, I guess, at Mark Aronson.
And Becky, where can you follow you and Lily?
At FNM Sisters on Instagram for all of the content Lily posts.
And you can follow me at Pancake for Table. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Friday Night Movie, the sibling rivalry and pop culture podcast. Join the Friday Night Movie family by following at Fry Night Movie on all of the socials and visiting our website, frynightmovie.com. Our theme song is by What Does It Eat? And make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.